YouTube in 1 second. So we'll put our smiles on and then we'll start recording on the other side.
Okay.
Okay. Oops. There we go. So now. Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back to Pushing the Limits. Today, I have an amazing woman to guest who is certainly one of my role models, Lorraine Moller. Welcome to the show. Fantastic to have you here with me.
Thank you, Lisa. Fantastic to be here with you.
I'm excited for this conversation. Before we got recording, we already delved into some deep topics. So who knows where this conversation is going to go, but I think it'll go pretty deep. You are a legend in the world of running. You have so many, you're 4 times Olympian. You've won the Boston Marathon. You've won the Osaka Marathon 3 times. You're an author. You are still involved with running. Lorraine, can you just give us a little bit of your background for starters? When did you realize that you were this amazing, incredible athlete? You know, what was your childhood like? And shall we go back that far?
Yeah, certainly not in my childhood, although, we were brought up in a time where we were naturally active and very just a part of nature and, engaged in the community and local athletics and swimming and, all those things, and walked bare feet and, just, went to the beach on the weekends and got sunburnt and, all those sorts of things. So it was a very lovely, free, close to nature sort of upbringing in my little town of Pataru, right in the middle of the North Island, and where everybody knew everybody, and it was just pretty easy living, and our needs were pretty simple. And those were the times when we had the quarter-acre section with the garden out the back, and we'd have tea, and it's like, okay, go get a cabbage for tea, and so you'd go, cut one and bring it in, and so it was, I suppose it sounds idyllic, but in certain terms it was. It was just fabulous basis for growing up healthy. I had my trials as a kid. I was in hospital a few times, and just that separation and just the emotional angst of being taken away from my family for long periods of time was very lonely. And I think that I think, we have things that happen to us and they sort of set you up. They set your story up, and then it's like, okay, go see what you make of it. So I had, I think the running for me was a real freedom, and something that I don't think it was something that I really decided to do. I just think it's something that took me.
It happened to you.
Yeah, it did. And one of the key events was when I went to high school and we graduated from the little kiddies athletics, doing 50 yards, 100 yards, I'm that old, it was yards. And we graduated to being able to do the 440 yards. And in my first 440-yard race at the local club, I could beat the girls who beat me in the sprints. And that was like, yeah, man, if you just give me a little bit longer, I've got your number, So I was really excited by that. And so I started to get really keen and show up and go in the school events, and I won just about everything in the school events.
Just naturally talented at that sort of resistance. Yep.
But at that time, and that would be in the 60s, it wasn't like a girl thing to do. There was nothing in your vocabulary for girl athlete or woman athlete
Yes.
or professional athlete even, that just didn't exist back then. And so that it was not a career choice being an athlete. And it was even discouraged somewhat. Yep. So it was considered as like a man's sport, and if you did too much of it, you would become manly, and
yes. Your uterus might fall out, as Catherine Switzer told me once.
I know. That's sort of like universal, like, people tell you that all across the world, I think.
Yep.
That was just a popular meme. It's sort of like if you had to wear clean underwear in case you got run over and taken to the hospital and they find out you got dirty underwear on, so those things sort of just become popular culture, but nobody really thinks about how true they are or whether they really apply. We just accept them. And I accepted that as a girl, we didn't have longer events, that we didn't have official events. The cross country was an unofficial usually. So we would have a men's race, and then they would have a little short girls race. But, that's just the way it was. I didn't think I was disadvantaged in any way. You just get in with what's available and go like heck, and I loved it.
And how did you develop then, because even like back in the 70s, 60s and 70s, there wasn't any official sort of things that you could go to. So how did you actually get, your later career was phenomenal. So how did you actually bridge that? Was it a time change too, that in the 70s things started to open up, or how did that sort of unfold?
People were really kind, and the club system was very nurturing. So as soon as they realized I had some talent, they sort of took me in hand, and I was taken to a neighboring town of Tokoroa, which was sort of like a big town, a little town, and introduced to John Davies, who was the bronze medalist from the 1964 Olympics in Tokyo. And so they wanted me to have a proper coach.
Wow.
So I was introduced into the Lydian training very young, from about the age of 14. And for races, etc., my event was the 880 yards. I really loved it, and so 2 laps of the track. And I also did cross country. But those events I competed in, there were no junior women, so I was competing against women who were probably 8-10 years my senior.
Wow.
I did go to my first national championships in the senior women's at the age of 14.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
And I made the final. I came last in the final. I came 8th. These women were pretty darn good,
Yeah, when you were 14.
Just sort of like hanging on. I can remember coming around the straight, and I had 2 people behind me, and I could just see them going, "Oh, I'm not letting this kid beat me," really
child
down and burn me off. But I was going representing New Zealand from the time I was 16.
Wow.
So that provided opportunity, and that was so darn exciting. Just to be going overseas and, wearing the silver fern and having a little uniform and, getting on a plane and going somewhere. And it was just the most amazing time, and I absolutely loved it. And I was put into a competition, and at a time when I was young enough not to have any respect for older people,
Yeah. You had no idea what was coming at you yet.
Yeah, so I sort of figured I could run with the best of them. So that was sort of part of my makeup or my setup, which really, it just went from there until finally I sort of took off on my own and went to the US and just sort of seeking greener pastures,
the next
the big
level.
wide world, and yeah.
Oh wow! So tell me a little bit, like Arthur Lydian. What what was he like, and tell us a little about, because I've heard you say in articles or something, there's a bit of a misrepresentation of how he trained, and what was his actual philosophy as an athlete that was actually under him for a while. What was he like, and what sort of training regime did you have, and how did that develop you?
Yeah, I think I was really, really fortunate to grow up in New Zealand, and his system was pretty much adopted by the New Zealand running culture, and I think still has, is part of the culture.
Yeah.
So,
Certainly.
and it's based on endurance training. So that's the first thing that John Davies did. Was give me a training program. He used to handwrite it on and send it to me by mail. So I would get a letter with my training program written on it, and it'd be so exciting. And I'd run with my dad. So my dad didn't want me going out there by myself, or we ran in the bush a lot. We got lost a lot, but he wouldn't have me there by myself. Although I'm sure if I'd navigated, we wouldn't have got lost. But anyway, yeah, I mean, we just, and we had a great time. It was really fun for me to get to know my dad. I don't think I would have developed that closeness.
Lovely.
Without having that running was just, it was just fantastic, so we just ended up doing longer and longer runs, and it was just building up mileage, just getting some aerobic base, which is really the crux of the Lydian training, is that you build your aerobic capacity, and that's the main engine that enables you to go,
the rest of it. Yeah, because a lot of the, like I had Rod Dixon on last week on the show, and he's also trained under that, and of course a lot of the great runners that have come out of New Zealand, and there's been many, have trained under that system. And then was it a real high mileage system? Like, was it is there anything that you do different now, because I know you're still involved with the Arthur Lydian, the groups that you're taking through now? Is there any change in the approach that you've had? Because a lot of the listeners out there are runners that are listening to this. So is there anything that you've learned along the way that you do differently now?
No, the Lydian system was sound. I mean, the only thing was, as an athlete, I'd come off a season and then I'd go, I'm going to just train harder than I've ever trained before, and then I'd jump in and overdo it, and,
yes.
And sort of mess it up. So,
there's a lot of that.
And that's what we do. We overtrain.
Yes.
And so the Lydian system itself, I think if you just take the way that he put it together, and he was a grandfather of periodization. We didn't call it periodization. The exercise physiologists came along a lot later, and then they started to put their jargon onto it and all the rest. But Arthur was very practical. So it's just what worked. It was about 60 years in the making. So you will find Lydian that he evolved it with, just trial and error. And then, as more people started to do research, he started to incorporate other things. But he was really like just what works, and what he put together worked really well. And what I did with the Lydian system was look at what were the principles, not looking at the hard and fast rules.
Yes.
Because as soon as you start looking at rules, you have limited yourself, and it doesn't work that way. It's an experiment of one.
Yes.
And your journey
Love
as an
that.
athlete is completely unique. You occupy your own place in space and time that nobody else can occupy. And if you can respect that and get away from any sort of cookie cutter stuff.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that personalization approach. Like that's what I'm heavily into now. Is like we have, you know, access to genetic testing and things like that now, where we can actually tailor things to people's genetics even. But back then that wasn't the case. But to make it your own, so here's the framework, and then you make it yours. That fits with you and your style of being and your style of life and everything that fits to you, rather than just forcing yourself into the confines of just this is, you know, black and white. I think that's pretty insightful, especially for back then. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm teaching now, and I teach courses through the Lydian Foundation to coaches on how to apply the Lydian training. And the big thing, I think, is to look at things in the overall picture, because the you know, you might say the devil's in the details, but the details can completely tell, like the devil, can tell a wrong story. So it's very easy for people to, and most common, I think, to overshoot the mark.
Yeah.
Like to put in too much.
Yep.
And then if you do if you put in too much energy into the task at hand, you will get the opposite of what you intended.
Yes. Yeah. Overtraining and burnout.
Yeah. And so, and also we live in this culture where we think more is better.
Yes.
But also
absolutely.
where we pander to outsourcing our information. And so not tapping into this incredible vehicle that we have that can synthesize and put the information together that is specifically tailor-made to you.
Yes.
And that is there. It's innate within all of us. We are just not tapping it.
Yeah.
And I think the journey of the athlete is a wonderful way to get to know yourself and to be able to tap that inner knowledge and to learn to trust it.
Yes.
And so the focus, and this happened to me during my own running, was, you know, initially you're motivated by the, you know, the just winning or getting a faster time and all those kinds of things, and you know, and then you think, well, what does it really mean? Like it's pretty silly, you know, you're all just running around.
Yeah, it's all a man-made.
And somebody goes, oh, I'm really great because I finished in front of you. And you go, well, what does that really matter in the big scheme of things? Well, in certain terms it doesn't. You know, the exercise is and I just gave a talk to our advanced classes on the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is that the focus is then on the inner journey that's taking place.
Absolutely.
And and as a path for us to get to know ourselves. You know, Socrates said, know thyself. And it's really sound advice, because I mean, what else are you going to do? Because you know, you go through life, and then suddenly you get to the other end, you go,
you know, I don't know what the hell I was about. And I mean, this is exactly in line with what I, you know, like to talk about, which is like, you know, that we learn so much when we do these, you know, athletic endeavors. And I don't care whether you're good or you're really not talented and you don't have any ability. It's all about your personal journey. And that's why any athlete who's just starting out and doing their first kilometer, you know, is on a journey to get to know their own body, their own mind, what they're capable of. And we find it, you know, and it's, I hate comparing, you know, like the actual winning of races and stuff is amazing, but how many of us are actually going to have a career like yours where you're actually at the top of the podium? For 99% of the people, it's about what they learn along the way, the health benefits that they gather from their training, the strength mentally, all of these aspects are just even more important, I think, than the getting the gold medal put around your neck or the silver or the bronze. It is much more about a personal journey for most people, I mean, you as an elite athlete at the top of the pyramid, so to speak, did you find that as well? Has it had a bigger implication on your entire life and your life philosophies than just the winning part of it?
Oh, yeah. So, in the end, the inner journey became more important to me than the outer journey. In a way, I think with life, you have your experiences and you're influenced by, your parents and your upbringing and your ancestors and all the rest. So we have all these influences that make up who we think we are. Mm-hmm. And I think then we go into our older adult life and we proceed accordingly with this concept of self, which then I think it starts to happen. You start to dismantle that concept of self and you start gradually stripping it away so that hopefully when you're ready to go out the other end, you have connected with the essence of who you truly are and not just all these roles and that the
expectations
you have and put on yourself, So, I think,
Was that for you? Like, was there a lot of expectation? Like I had a lot of expectation in my early years from my dad, who I loved dearly and wanted to impress and wanted to please. And so I had a lot of expectation all the way through. So a lot of the things that I did weren't necessarily what I wanted to be doing. They were things that, I felt compelled to do or expected to do. Was that a part of your journey with running, or was that more you just had this passion and actual, like Rod just loved running,
Mm-hmm.
What was it like for you? Which, was it a cut and dried thing that this was a passion of yours, or was it more of an expectation that you would, because you were so good, did you ever question that?
Yeah. No, it was mine. I mean, it was completely driven by me. Instigated and driven by me. My family was really supportive and my dad got on board with it. So my dad got into running because I was a teenager that got into running, and he figured he was like the canary in the coal mine, if I was doing too much or overdoing it, and he did the same as me, well then he would cark it before I would.
Brilliant. What a lovely dad.
It was very nice of him. Yeah. And he did, he actually died while he was out running.
Oh wow.
Way too soon. But that was the way he wanted to exit, so he did.
Well, it's never a good thing to go, but if you're going to go, I suppose doing something and being healthy until the last moment is the way that most of us would like to exit this world.
And my parents were obviously proud, and I mean, you get out there and especially when you're in an Olympics or a Commonwealth Games or something that's really big for your country, you do feel the expectation of your country and how you do, and it really matters. And it's quite personal, and sometimes when I didn't do that well and you get really trashed,
wow.
Oh God, I gotta go home,
it's harsh.
Yeah, it is. And you just I don't know, you get over it because you realize that you have to keep things in perspective, and I think one thing I could always come back to and just be in love with the journey of the race, and it didn't go away, you know. I just
that passion stayed right throughout you. So let's talk now a little bit about some of the highlights of your career, because this is like, for most of us, we're never going to get to do these things at this level. Like, what's it like to go to the Olympics? What's it like to compete in the first marathons that women were allowed to do in the Olympics? What was that like for you?
Well, the first marathons, you know, my foray into marathons was another thing that was sort of serendipity in a way. It sort of came to me, and maybe there was a certain I don't know, maybe openness for new experience. I think that, yeah, that just led me into
Longer.
different
Yep.
sorts of places. But what happened in when I left school, and I was already a nationally recognized runner as a high school kid, and what to do, and I didn't know what to do, so I decided to go to phys ed school because it was the closest thing that I could think of that suited sporty woman, you know.
Yes, exactly. It's all we
And
had back then.
yeah. You just, you know, that's what sporty girls do, become a phys ed teacher. So, and Gary was, my brother was already at phys ed school in Dunedin. So that seemed really easy to head off down to Dunedin. I thought that was really great because it was like really a long way from home.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Really
I was
exotic.
like, yeah, you know, and I just loved being a student. I just thought that was so fantastic. And so the first day I was there at the phys ed school, I was standing on the steps of the phys ed school, and I was sort of looking to my left and looking to my right, and I didn't know where anything was or which way to go for my run. And this group of guys came running past, and they were a bunch of lunchtime runners, and some are very good runners. And one of them looked up and saw me standing there in my running shoes and shorts and said, "Hey, chick, you got to come and run with the boys today," you know. And I went, okay, there's an invitation I can't refuse. So I bounded down the steps. I glommed onto the back of this group. I could barely keep up, but we did this run. And the next day I was there again, and the next day, and so I became the girl that ran with this group of guys,
crazy guys.
Yeah, and they sort of took me under their wing, and so I did all their runs with them. And Sunday was, you know, like the Dunedin version of the Waitakere run was the Waitatis. So, you know, it's just you run out somewhere over a mountain and back down the other side, and you got in 20 miles, you know.
Wow.
So I started doing those every Sunday with the guys. And as a 800-meter runner, you know, I was building this incredible base, and I just got stronger and stronger.
Did it make you slower doing the long stuff, you know, for the actual short track races?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. That's
Wow,
yeah,
really? I've never been fast. So
endurance running does not make you slow.
Really?
No, it does not. Though you do need to do the faster work to bring on your speed, but the endurance will enable you eventually to be able to sustain your fastest possible pace.
Wow.
That's the basis of endurance. So nearly all events over 2 minutes would derive their energy mostly from aerobic means, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so the greater aerobic capacity you have, the greater capacity you have for any event over 2 minutes.
But what about the you know, like, I've never been fast, that's why I went long.
Yeah.
So I don't have a comparison really of having lost speed because I never had any to begin with. Yes. But doing the super long stuff, you know, the ultra marathon distances, I, you know, got dreadfully slow when it came to the shorter distances over time. And I always put that down to, well, you know, my muscle, you know, fast twitch fibers are mainly turned into slow twitch fibers. And now actually, like in the last 5 years where I stopped doing the ultra marathons and I've been concentrating more on shorter, sharper, I'm still not fast by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm a heck of a lot faster than I used to be over the short distance. So even in your 50s, you can start to go back the other way. But it's interesting to hear you say that no, you don't find that, because that's really interesting.
With some caveat, and that is that if your body will respond to what you give it.
Yep.
So, in terms of training, it's stimulus response. So, what training is, you are giving the body a specific stimulus to get a specific response from the body. And it will do that really, really well. So the thing about the Lydian pyramid is that you build the endurance, but you don't do that ad infinitum, right?
Right.
So then you go on and then you go through the faster phases and you develop the muscles on faster twitch and the different ones right through to your peak event. So we have quite a few ultra runners who come and do our coaching courses. And they get in and they get really excited about doing the phases and getting the full development. So that's the beauty, I think, of the Lydian training, is that it is holistic. It puts all the energy systems and every type of training response in its rightful place. It's so that you can be at your peak on the day that counts. What I find with a lot of ultra people is that they've just lost their flexibility and range of motion because they haven't practiced it.
That's definitely a big part of our training in how we coach is a lot of strength and a lot of mobility and proprioception work and coordination and drills and things that traditionally, when because I started back in the dark ages too, when we had no idea, and I certainly had no coaching. Back in the day, I just ran long because I wasn't very fast, so I'd just run longer than everybody else, and I was good at that. But now I understand, and that whole mobility piece of the puzzle is absolutely crucial, and the drills and the form and the strength training are all the foundational elements to be able to run the mileage. It's like a pyramid for us, how we build it. So I totally agree. And I think most ultra runners neglect that part, and that's where they come unstuck to some degree, and you get very, very slow and stiff, and there's reasons for that, but you manage to finish the distance, but the quality sometimes goes down with the length of time that you're out there.
And also, if you're out there for a heck of a long time, you don't want to spend much time in the air. You just, you don't need a lot of upwards motion or that long, beautiful stride, etc. So you develop a bit of a shuffle, and that's just being efficient at the distance that you're doing.
Yes.
But
that's really fascinating. And it is like I did, like I said at the beginning, everything wrong that you could possibly do wrong, I think, in my early career. Just like go long, go hard, but no strength, no mobility, no drills. I didn't know what running form was. I just ran. And incredible that you can still achieve great distances in that way, but it's certainly not healthy. And was very, very high mileage in those early days.
Yes.
And that has its own toll. And now we try to train people efficiently, because most of the people that we're training are also, got careers and kids and jobs and stresses. So we find that you can't train them like you would a 20-year-old professional athlete when they're a 45-year-old mum with 3 children and a full-on career. Then you're going to break them if you have that high mileage model. So it's much more about time efficiency and getting the best results that they can get with the level of stress that they're already under. It's just really interesting to compare notes on all this, especially as you've come from the elite level. And a lot of the things that I find with people who are not in that elite group don't respond the same way that elite runners would. Like when you were doing your your top level stuff, the amount of mileage and the amount of training that you would have been able to cope with is not what your average person can cope with, because you would have been focused on that solely.
And I think if you look historically at Lydian training, he started coaching the first joggers group in the early 60s. So the story is that he was invited after his Olympic successes to the Tamaki Yacht Club to talk to the businessmen there about training, etc. And, he was asking them about, their own levels of fitness, and a whole bunch of them said, well, we can't do any. Our doctors told us to take it easy because we've had cardiac arrests, and Arthur's like, typical Arthur, that's absolute rubbish. If you guys want to start jogging with me, I will teach you how to run a marathon. Wow. And he had quite a group, of which were quite a few of them were cardiac patients, and had that first running group. Wow. And he got them to run a marathon in about 9 months.
Wow,
so
that's amazing.
You're talking more than a couch potato.
Exactly. And he approached that differently than he would with his elite athletes, obviously.
Well, he had to. Yeah, because they couldn't start out on 100 miles a week, and he soon realized that you can't expect a
middle-aged businessman,
a beginning runner to do that kind of mileage, because they spend so much more time on their feet that they're actually doing a lot more work than an elite runner.
Yeah.
So then he changed the distance to duration.
Yes, that's what we do too, mostly is duration, because that's more of, because otherwise if you run your good marathons in incredibly fast times, but the person who's at the other end of the marathon who's taking 6 hours, they're going to be out there for twice as long, or longer. And that doesn't equate from an equivalent point of view. And that's so that's exactly what we do.
Physiologically it's about the same based on duration, not based on distance. So if you spend 2 hours out there and you're just jogging along, and that's as fast as you can go, you will have about the same effect as somebody who runs at the same effort but is a heck of a lot faster.
Exactly.
So
really interesting.
So the system is adaptable to all levels of runner, and that's why you go on principles. So you look at what you're trying to achieve, and then how best to achieve it based on the level of that person. But we're all physiologically, we all basically work the same. I mean, we all have we metabolize fats and glycogen, and have the same energy systems, and they're invoked at the same perceived effort or level of effort, and can be developed. And we all have this system of adaptation. So, and we're all losing cells and regenerating them all the time. And that is basically, so if you're becoming a new person, like they say, maybe 95% of our bodies is replaced every year, just cells dying and new ones coming on, and, or
7 years, I think it is.
Every 7 years you get a completely new you. So it doesn't really matter. The point is that, can you direct who you're going to be in the future? You can. Athletes know that.
And that's what adaptation is all about, and why we do it, why we train, so that we get that adaptation. And how do you get, what do you do with people, because we get a lot of athletes who are just head through the wall type A personalities who want to go harder than what their bodies, and I'm putting myself in this category too, harder than what their bodies can actually cope with. They're burning themselves out, breaking themselves, and not actually reaping the reward that they should be for the amount of effort that's going in to their training. How do you try to, get them to back off a bit,
Yeah, so one of the key things that I teach is that we start right from the beginning, learning to pay attention to our own bodies and getting this rapport with ourselves, and learning that you want a cooperative relationship with your own body, and it will give you the information that it has, and which is far better than if you're trying to perform to these external measures, which there's so many of them, because we can measure every frigging thing that we do,
Nowadays we can,
and post it somewhere for other people to look at, and they couldn't care less because they're too busy putting theirs up and wanting other people to pay attention to it. So so this constant pandering to make ourselves into somebody that we think there's something on the outside that's going to approve of us. And so people who overdo it have a lack of confidence and a lack of trust in their own body and their own physiology. Because my goodness, your body does an incredible job to keep us alive and to keep us going and to perform the tasks that we give to it so we can achieve the dreams that we have. And man, it will bust itself for you. But we do have certain sort of measures, and it will also put into place when you're going to kill yourself. It goes, well, I'm not doing this because this mind, our minds are incredible also, but most of them use the minds like a slave driver.
Yes. I certainly did. Yeah.
And so, and you have to learn the hard way sometimes. But, so we have being able to recognize and to know where those danger signals are and to be able to catch them and back off. And so, I start out my courses with talking about the fallacy of hard work. Hard work is not where it's at. Everybody thinks, oh, God, you must be a really hard worker. Well, I can knuckle down, but, why put in more energy than the task requires? So hard is redundant. Just do the work. Don't make it hard. Because then now, as soon as you say hard, people start to stress, they tense up, okay.
It flips the switch in your brain, and it becomes a negative that you associate with pain with your exercise and things, and that creates a negative loop.
It's horrible, and I mean, I always, when I won big races, it was actually, you get in a state of flow and it feels wonderful.
Wow. So when you were actually like at the top of your game and winning these international events and things, you felt like so it didn't feel as if you were like killing yourself to get across the line on those days. It didn't feel like flow.
Look, you always get pretty tired in a marathon. You go,
there'd be in and out of that, but you felt like you were prepared for this, but not over prepared for this, and not burnt out and sorry about it. Like you actually enjoyed it. You enjoyed those top races that you really did well in. Did that feel like a flow state?
So that the system that I teach is it's a performance system, right? And it's geared so that you get the best you possibly can on the day that counts. And so that's getting yourself into a peak performance state from wherever you're at, right? And everybody can do that. And it feels amazing. And I'm sure you've felt it. You just get there and it's just like everything's clicking, right? And you've got it. So it is a coordination of body, heart, mind, and spirit. It's just they all come together and you reach that state of flow. And actually, for most of us, we don't get there because we are working too hard. We have too much tension, and that getting into a peak state is actually an act of surrender. So
very wise.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, when you hit it a few times and you go, man, this feels so good, you know, I'm going to try and figure out how I got there again. You know, as I said, you know, when I was young, I'd just go, oh, I'm going to train harder than ever
Yeah,
before.
exactly.
And, you know, and then it seems to sort of go away from you and you get injured or something, or you don't perform as well because you're in the syndrome of hard work. You're overcooking it. You've got excess energy. That energy has to go somewhere, you know, and all it does is it just messes things up.
Yep.
So that precision of giving the stimulus that is needed for the effect, and the thing is that the effect of it takes place during the recovery period, not when you're actually doing the task. So, you know,
hallelujah, that's an important point. Like, because this is the thing. Like, if you are, you know, like if you had a bad night's sleep, you've been under the pump all week with work, you've got kids who are sick and everything's going to custard, and then you go and smash yourself because it's on your list today to do a really long, hard run.
Yes.
You're not going to get the adaptation. You'd have been better to go, hang on, well, life's come at me this week. I'm going to actually take it a little bit easier, and having that confidence to do that and back off, because I think a lot of people are like, yeah, but I have to go harder, and they congratulate themselves when they slave drive themselves and they push them through that event. While that might make you mentally tougher, and there's some advantages of that approach for a while, it isn't going to get the adaptation that you're going to want, because actually it's in the recovery, it's in the sleep, it's in the downtime that you're actually going to get that benefit. And if you're not able to adapt, then all that training was for nothing, or worse, it can be even detrimental to your immune system and to your health and your mental health. And that's a hard sell. It's a hard, you know, tough-minded athletes who think that they have to. And, you know, I certainly struggled with this and still do on occasion, where, you know, but I have to go harder and I'm not, you know, doing enough because I'm not getting the results. Therefore, you know, a little is good, more must be better. And that approach doesn't work.
Yeah, look, it's a lack of trust. And I think a lot of us are brought up to sort of think in the negative all the time, and to talk about what we don't want to have happen. And we approach a lot of the things that we wish to do, or the things we wish to create in our lives, from a state of fear. Mm-hmm. And that's a real shame, because that immediately puts us on the back foot, and then we can't get into this natural flow. So, you know, look, the world is set up for us to be creative beings, and for us to have be able to manifest our dreams and make works that are worthwhile and contributing. Mm-hmm. So that, you know, when we leave this life, we have left something better. We have used our own talents, and things have are enhanced because of our being here. And I think most people have a very huge drive. I think all human beings do, to be of value in this life in some way. Yep. And I think, you know, we started out talking about this, but we have these systems that and they're systems, they're not human, you know, they're just systems that are put in place that eventually become self-serving, and they don't serve us. And so they will perpetuate fear, etc., because it just gets us putting our energy into the system rather than putting it into ourselves and our own dreams. And I think that what we need to realize is that it is set up in our favor. And I'll give you just one really good example of that. So when we train and we give the body a training stimulus, right? And so to meet that training task, that run or whatever we do, that workout, you have used this fuels in your body, and you've broken apart all these bonds to provide energy to enable you to do the task. And then you stop doing it, and as soon as you stop doing it, the body gets busy and it starts to reconstitute those energy bonds and etc. So all these adaptations are taking place, and it brings us back to normal again. But it doesn't just bring us back to normal. It gives us more.
Better. Yeah.
It gives us, it makes us stronger. It
Hermetic
gives us
stress.
more, more storage space, stronger muscle fibers, better oxygenation. It actually adapts itself to better accommodate what we are asking it to do.
Yep.
So nature has given you a bonus.
Yep.
I mean, if you can't see that everything is set up in your favor just by that little thing alone, is like, wow,
Yeah, biology is just incredible. These are hermetic stresses. So when we put our body under strain, we come back stronger. When we put ourselves under too much strain, we actually break it down. So that's that fine line that we have to, for each of us individually, find where those points are. And that will shift as we get stronger, and you'll be able to take on more training. But we have to honor the process, to honor the hermetic stress recovery, and then build on that so that we can then, eventually you can be running at the best if it's a training thing. But this is in every area of life, that we're more we're more resilience, the word. We're more able to take on the load. This is just the beautiful thing of all these hermetic stresses, and that, if we don't push ourselves at all, well, then we're going to the body's going to go, well, this is a piece of cake. I can just keep being where I'm at, and then it'll actually start to decline. Yeah. What I'd be really interested in your take with older people. One of my passions in life is to empower older people to not give up on their lives, because society says you're past it, and that you've got to use by date, and you've passed it, and all of these sorts of attitudes that are just insidious in our culture. That in the Māori culture, it's a little bit better, where we actually respect our elders and we value their wisdom, but in general culture, it's pretty bad. And when we also have this thing, well, when I retire, then I'll recover and I'll relax, and for me, that's the beginning of a downward spiral. So in the rehabilitation journey that I've been on with my mum for the last 5 years, I set her tasks every day that she has to achieve. She has goals that we're aiming for, and of course we have phases of recovery and so on. But she's always on a mission of some sort or another. And she's 79 years old, and we're going forward. And I will treat her like that until there is no hope, to the end of her days, because I believe that humans need challenge. They don't need comfort. They don't need to be, mollycoddled and stuck on the couch to watch telly all day because you're older now. And I'd like to see people having their challenge, whatever their challenge is. And it could be like mum's off at art classes now and just loving the creative, she's got time to do something different. And that's a goal and that's helping her brain stay on point, What's your take on the way society sees people when they get older? And, how do you approach that from your personal standpoint?
Well, from my own personal standpoint of getting older, I'm with you 100%, Lisa, and I think we need to continually adding new stimuli, and they can be stress. It's stimuli, stress. It's all just you're asking the body to do new things, and so then you just inviting new experience into your life. And I think that as we get older, our world should be getting bigger, not smaller.
Yes.
And I do think that a lot of what we attribute to old age is just bad habit.
Mhm.
You know,
It's
it is.
accumulating it over many
Yeah.
years and makes it, the typical aging things. I mean, we are all going to die at some point, but my goal is to live an extremely long life that is healthy until the end. That's my goal.
Yeah.
None of us know what's going to come at us from left field. I've experienced an awful lot. I know that some things can still, but that's the goal. That's the approach that I take. And so I'm doing everything in my life and in my family's life to make that as best as possible. And to have constant challenge and have constant goals that you're aiming for and new things that you're learning, it keeps you in this growth mindset for starters, and it keeps your body not knowing what's coming. So it's still having to adapt and go forward rather than going backwards. And as we get older, we get wiser. Well, hopefully we do. Most of us do. We've got more experience. We're more able to cope with, all the emotional things that we probably weren't able to cope with when we were 20. We've got all these experiences, and it's just fantastic if we can look to our older generations as the one who provide wisdom for the ones that are coming behind, and they're seen as a valuable resource in our society, and not as being you're past it because you're over 50 or you're over 60 or you're over 70 or whatever this demarcation line is that people have, and they put on themselves, partly because society does this.
Yeah, and it's a horrible thing for you to be made redundant in society in terms of your value to it.
Yes.
And that is largely, I think, exacerbated by our what runs the show is generally money.
Yep.
And so people are not seeing as older people as being contributing into,
Yep.
and yet we need to start valuing other things besides that. I think we are at the moment, just with the times and what it's brought, a time of shifting, and there's an invitation here to make sure that we reconnect with our humanness and start to prioritize what things we value as human beings, because we're in danger of losing a lot of them. And we look at our older people, and we also look at our children. Our children have a life expectancy less than that of their parents.
Yes, horrific.
It's the wrong direction. It's like, and you can't, you cut off your old people, your young people are not benefiting from the wisdom that is available, and that wisdom is something that you can't put a price on.
Yes.
And we need to get back to away from this sort of outside focus and measuring everything in those sorts of terms, and start to value our human relationships and our depth of experience and our connection to the divine spark, which we all have within us, and to value that journey and support each other on that journey. So we're all in it alone, and we're all in it together.
Yeah,
and
that's beautifully put.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we are in an age of change, and I hope things will gather some more momentum. And we've got lots of problems in the world, but we've also got lots of opportunities now to change things. And in the areas that I'm working in, I'm seeing huge changes taking place within just the last few years, and that's encouraging. And then there is lots of negativity, but I like to focus on the positivity. But I think let's start valuing our older population. They have a lot to bring to the party, and what we want to do is help people stay healthier longer, and that requires a bit of a mindset shift. Like when I take my mum to the gym, and she's training her butt off there at 79 years old, and people know where she's come from, like been in a wheelchair for a few years and not able to do anything, and now she's doing all this crazy stuff, well compared to where she was at. That's a role model. she's a role model for so many older people who now have actually joined the gym and are doing stuff because they go, well, if Isabel can do it, I can do it. And that's, to me, the greatest beautiful thing that's come out of that tragic journey that we've been on. It's empowering now other people to not give up just because they're older, and to have that attitude of I'm going to fight my way back. And then, it's a team event. I'm Mum's coach and mentor and driver. She's the one who's willing to put in the hard yards and to do whatever I ask her to do to the best of her ability. And that's a winning combination. And I'd like to see more people have that if they've been on rehabilitation journeys, even for younger people, that they've got someone in their corner that's willing to help them fight. Because when you're in a big health battle, you need people fighting with you and alongside you.
Yeah. And when you're down and you don't have the energy, that's what families are for.
Mm-hmm.
That's what families are for, to help you when you need a help, and you can all be putting in and bringing it together. And I just think this divorcing ourselves from old people and just giving them a bunch of pills to and putting them in front of a telly. What a waste. What a waste. Incredible waste of resources.
Yep. And loneliness and despair and all of those things. And the value of that person's life history is just disappearing when it could be being imparted. If we can keep their minds active and their bodies as strong as possible for as long as possible, they have a great value. It's not like, from a societal standpoint, it's often thought, well, once you retire, you're no longer adding value to society. It's, measured in monetary value, and you're costing more in the health systems. So, hopefully you don't live too long. That's just an approach to me that is just horrific. And the way that society treats its young and its old and its vulnerable is the mark of a civilization. I think that is what we should be measured by. Not how the strong.
Completely. Yeah. And I think the example of your mom is that all we have to do is take care of what's in front of us and do the best that we can. And that is being an example to other people. It just starts to, so she's going to the gym and other people see her and they go out and they have a whole different mindset about the possibilities and what happens. And that's all it takes,
And that's, and you like the work that you're doing too, like that's imparting your knowledge. You could be sitting back on a beach somewhere and just enjoying life. Instead, you're still teaching, you're sharing, you're imparting that valuable knowledge that you have to other people. And that is gold. It's so important. And so Gary, your lovely brother, who I absolutely adore and admire. I think he's crazy and awesome at the same time. Still world, leading mountain biker, at his age. And he certainly helped me on my journey when I was broken and burnt out, and came to him, a few years ago going, but Gary, I'm broken. Can you help fix me? And he put pieces of the puzzle back together again, and helps, gave me actually a role model, because he'd done the same thing, burned himself out and blown himself apart, and he'd found a way back. And so that was a role model for me. There is a way back when you have smashed the crap out of your body and you didn't listen to it. And the work that he's doing is I think, is fantastic. Well, and it's the same. It doesn't matter what age you are, your cells are still regenerating themselves, and you can still direct that process to make a better you than you were before, day by day.
And we do things in increments. It's just giving it just a bit of what you want in the direction that you wish to go.
And you don't need to be perfect. You can just be inching your way forward with, one bite at a time and one exercise session at a time, and, one good sleep at a time. All of these things add up. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we're totally aligned. Lorraine, this has been a really interesting, amazing conversation. I think we need to have a couple more privately because I think there's a lot
Yeah.
more that we need to discuss and maybe do some things together. But I really just want to thank you for your time today. It's been really an insight. You are a legend in the sport, and what you've achieved is just nothing short of amazing. I remember, as a kid, watching you and a lot of your fellow people in that age group who just did amazing things, and it was awesome to have like Rod on last week on the show as well. And it's that's those are role models for me. I never went to the Olympics or anything like that, but I did things in my own way, and that's you pioneered a path, especially for women, to be able to do long distance running, and that's just gold.
Well, thank you very much, Lisa. It's been an exciting journey, and I feel so privileged to have been born in this time and in this body, and to have had the experiences that I've had, and it's not over yet.
Hell no. The best is yet to come.
Yeah.
That's the approach you have to have, and you're obviously still doing that. Lorraine, where can people find you if they want to learn about what you're doing, read your book On the Wings of Mercury? Where's the best place to reach out to you?
Yeah, they can reach me at Lorraine at lydianfoundation.org.
So
just spell Lydian right. You got to get your I's and A's in the right order.
Lydian. Yep.
Lydian. Yeah, like Lydia with a RD. Just write to me. They can go to our website, lydianfoundation.org, and to see the programs that we've got. And we have quite a few New Zealand coaches that have been through the course, and they're very popular, and we've got a lot of wonderful things, and expanding it all the time. So
awesome. Maybe we collaborate and go and do them. Do one of those as well. Always adding courses to my list of things that I have to do. That might be one of them that I have to add.
Oh, you'd be most welcome, Lisa. We'd love